All right, we got a little pre-roll here. Hello there, fans. This is Band Central. A little pre-roll. This is John Reid.
It's going to start up in just a second.
Okay.
There we go. Yo, yo.
We got 2 minutes and 10 seconds until our show live. We're here at it's WPKN Radio.
Yeah, WPKN Radio.
WPKN Radio, the official YouTube channel. WPKN Radio, the official YouTube channel. Here in our pre-roll segment with my friend John Reid and, God, 10 years you've been at FTC.
11.
11.
Yep.
Sounds like you're counting.
11 years. That's been almost 11 and a half years now. Surprisingly.
And you were not even in Fairfield County. You moved here for the job, right?
No, actually, I moved here to become the CEO of the Hole in the Wall Foundation.
Oh, Paul Newman.
Which is Paul Newman Charity, yeah.
And how long were you there for?
A little over 2 years.
Okay, so you, that's kind of cool because you got acclimated to the area.
I did, and actually Clea Newman Sutherland was on my board at Hole in the Wall, but she was also a neighbor. That's how I got connected to FTC.
Hmm. 50 seconds. Steve has a way of just sitting down in the chair with 3 seconds to go. You know, he's like...
It's a trained professional.
Yeah. I start with 30 seconds of music. He's a good guy, Joe Celli. Volunteer-based organization.
Yeah.
Okay. 10 seconds. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. For the next hour, I aim to entertain and educate you about music and causes that can enrich your life. A delicious mix of talking and music we call fun philanthropy or funlanthropy, where the desire to improve the welfare of others is combined with music and fun. Today you will meet saxman and singer Rob Sommerville. You will also meet John Reid from Fairfield Theater Company, who works very hard to promote arts, music, and culture in our community. We'll be calling Rob remote, but hey, John, it's good to have you here.
Good to be here. It's been a while. Congratulations to Steve, by the way, on the new WPKN. Looks fantastic here.
Yeah, it's fun to have you here. Yeah.
That's it. You're listening to WPKN 89.5 on your FM dial, WPKN.org on your computer. And if you're live streaming via YouTube, it's WPKN Radio, the official YouTube channel. More on them later. I'm Rob Fried, and welcome to Band Central Radio, where we broadcast the fourth Monday of every month, right from here in Bridgeport. But also on your audio device of choice anytime you want to listen via WPKN podcasts. And as I mentioned, the live stream on YouTube. We've got a great show over the next hour introducing you to Rob and John. And we also have WPKN General Manager Steve di Costanzo here in the studio. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Rob. Good to be here. And again, I just want to say, John, you've had quite a career at the Fairfield Theater Company. And I'm just curious, in talking about construction, You have any other plans, or are you pretty much finished now?
No, we're
the
actually
building.
building a permanent venue in the parking lot right now. And we just poured the footing for that. So we're going to have we'll put a permanent stage out there.
Really interesting.
We've already gotten a purpose-built sound system just for outdoors. We fenced off a whole lot. And so last summer we did something called the Fresh Air Series, which was 10 free shows to the public. So we'll do some free shows, but also some ticketed shows. Started in the next few weeks.
Great.
Yeah,
So we'll have a third venue now,
venue.
all that diversifies. So we'll get into that in a minute. Fellas, today I want to talk to you, and I want to talk to you, dear PKN listeners. It's lunch break. Maybe here we are on a Monday. Maybe you're driving on I-95 or walking your dog at lunch or just sitting in front of your computer. I want to talk to you about mistakes, as I have been facilitating a workshop at the Westport Library called The Magic of Mistakes. Let me tell you a little about it. So first off, when I talk about things on air in my newsletter or in classes, in most cases, I'm bringing up topics that I'm curious about, that they want to explore with like-minded people. I'm not presenting myself as the expert, a master of the universe, any of that stuff. Rather, just a curious student. And I don't know about you, but I was raised to pursue excellence and perfectionism. And I developed compulsive tendencies in my youth, which meant that mistakes were fine if other people made them. Yet for me, I would have preferred not to make mistakes and simply be excellent. Can you guys relate to that?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, as I entered life as a young adult, I had noticed the prevalence of mistakes. So the best hitters in baseball make an out 2 out of 3 times going to the plate. Right? Yeah. When I was a door-to-door Bible salesman in my youth, I would get 3 yeses for every 27 no's that I had. That's a lot of failure, to get, and it was just part of the game.
Was it both books or just one? New and old.
It was. I had Bible storybooks. I had the whole shooting match, but you could get what you wanted. Yeah. And in my time with Ray Dalio, my mentor at the largest, most successful hedge fund in the world, we would be wrong on trades 30 to 40% of the time.
Really?
Yet still make money for our clients consistently. And so there was a lot going on about being wrong. And then, I also want to make a point that some of our world leaders used mistakes for iterating. And what I mean by that is Churchill, very famously, in the first battle with the Germans in World War II, he decided to have that battle be in North Africa. Why? Because he knew that they would likely lose. But he wanted to see what the Germans brought at him. And he wanted to, why lose on your own turf, So here's a guy that, kind of lived with that notion of mistake. So this prevalence of mistakes led me to, over time, develop an attitude that I have that supports having a life making mistakes. And the first attitude is humility, knowing that there's a lot that I don't know. When you think about it, 96% of the matter is called dark matter. That means they don't know what it is. So we understand 4% of the matter in the universe. 98% of our DNA is called junk DNA. That means they don't understand what it does. So there's just a lot we don't know, when you think about operating in life. Then there's this mood or attitude of curiosity that it's possible to actually look at the mistakes we make as just obstacles, but thinking about, okay, this is showing me what doesn't work so I can figure out what works. The third attitude I developed over time about mistakes is this idea of personal growth. At Bridgewater, we called it looping, which is this idea that you learn from your mistakes and then you come back stronger. And it's the point that it's not that you made a mistake. It's that, how did you respond to that? And did you learn from it? So, even if you have a good attitude, you still need some skills. Some of the skills that I've been talking about in the workshop are I've been using this hero's journey framework, which was, you familiar with Joseph Campbell, the great mythologist, and he's a storyteller, but you can actually view when you make a mistake, it's kind of like a guide. So, when you think of all the movies and all the novels that you read, there's always the Karate Kid, but there's Mr. Miyagi, the guide. Or there's Luke Skywalker, but there was Yoda, the guide. Well, mistakes can be viewed as your guide. And when it comes to personality growth, it's an easy thing to talk about, but it also usually involves some amount of pain. And then reflecting and having some kind of breakthrough to the other side. And I'm not going to get into it here on the radio, but it's something that we explore in my workshop, and that also my friend Ray Dalio does a really good job detailing that process in his book, Principles. A couple other things that I would mention is that to view mistakes properly, it's important to develop a certain centeredness, a mindfulness, and it's an ability to look at yourself from above, so you're less reactive when mistakes happen. So it's actually possible, the reason I call it the magic of mistakes is it's actually possible to learn to welcome and appreciate mistakes for the serendipity and the magic they bring to life. Right? And so, in music, which I know, us WPKN listeners are very interested in that vein, there's the famous quote by Miles Davis that there are no wrong notes. Yeah, right? Sure. We're familiar with that one. And then anybody who listens to the music of Jerry Garcia, we all know that Jerry unabashedly would make mistakes in his playing, but then he would make that part of the motif in order to explore it. And so it's kind of like, and that's what brings some of the new freshness and ideas. So let me pause.
I'm thinking about that, with music, making mistakes, and sometimes it leads into a direction that it's not actually a mistake, but it's something that sounds like brand new, something that's been just discovered. And they thought it was a mistake, but maybe it was just a new chord or a new modality. So you never know.
You never know. I'm just interested in your guys' reactions to what I just said, if anything, kind of resonated for you, or if you have a personal story to share.
I'll tell you that about 25 years ago, I began advocating for a section on resumes that talked about failures. And it's because I used to work for some pretty big organizations. I had hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 staff, and I interviewed a lot of people, in the process and over time. And I noticed that all of us were wired to put your best foot forward, talk about all the great things you've done, talk about it. And one time in an interview, I was listening to someone talk about a project. I said, "Did you ever fail at any of these?" And the guy kind of looked, stricken that I asked a question. And I realized I'd caught him off guard. I said, "Not a trick question. I'm just curious what you learn from." And for me personally, I've probably learned more through a number of failures, whether it was just misperception, just a purely bad decision or whatever. But a lot of those times, that's how I've grown. And frankly, it's always great to say, "Oh, I finished that project on time within budget." That's great, for the percentage of time you do that. But then what did you learn from it? And so I really have interviewed people. I say, "So after you've told me some of these, is there one project in particular that you just failed at? And can you tell me what you've learned?" Some people go, "Oh, nothing comes to mind." And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, you're about due. Maybe I should look on.
Let somebody else take that risk.
Let someone take that one, right.
How about you, Steve? Any personal reflections?
Well,
I mean, because it's a topic where we're also a little bit revealing something about ourselves here to our friends and listeners, but it's worthwhile conversation.
I think the point that I'm thinking about is when you mentioned learning from your mistakes, because I have made a lot of mistakes, in my life. I think we all have made a lot of mistakes, and the only kind of positive takeaway is that if you've learned something that you can correct some either attitude or behavior, and even sometimes, unfortunately, they may be short-term gains. But, mistakes, I can think that one of my first careers was kind of a mistake, but in some respects, it was a good stepping stone. I mean, I got into banking early, and it just wasn't necessarily kind of my personality. I mean, I was very dutiful and tried to do everything right, like you had mentioned earlier, But I think it's, I learned maybe quickly to pivot and go in different directions. But I mean, kind of mistakes are the name of the game with the human race, I think.
Well, we're going to listen to something here that's not a mistake. It's one of Rob Sommerville's tracks with Kung Fu, Speed Bump of Your Love. We'll be right back.
I adore you, and I implore you not to ignore these feelings that I'm having for you. And if you tease me, I'll let you please me and do all those friggin' things you wanted to. Can't you see you got me stacked up like this heaping pile of trash? Because you got me backed up, because you make me chase that ass. You want me so you can flaunt me. Oh, you keep your booty and I'll keep all my cash. This is how it'll end. With this weight on top of me, I'm not sure my soul can mend. This is how it'll be. Until you stop these foolish games, I can't be free. I'm getting old, but not over the hill. You shut my mouth, but I can't swallow the pill. Without a push, without a shove, my heart took a digger on the speed bump of your love. Now I can't fake it anymore, but I don't hate you. After all these years, I've tried so hard to shake you. Gonna make you understand. Go play crazy with another man. Gonna take the wheel and make a speed bump out of you. This is how it'll end. With this weight on top of me, I'm not sure my soul can mend. This is how it'll be. Until you stop these foolish games, I can't be free. I'm getting old, but not over the hill. You shut my mouth, but I can't swallow the pill. Without a push, without a shove, my heart took a digger on the speed bump of your love. All you ever do for me is cause me pain. All you ever do is wreck my heart. All I ever needed was a chance to be whole again.
Yeah. Wow. We are not yet. We're listening to Speed Bump of Your Love by Kung Fu featuring Rob Sommerville. You can hear him there playing sax and also singing there. Awesome, Rob Sommerville. We're going to interview him in a minute. But first, let me update you on Band Central. Band Central, the nonprofit music organization that I am the executive director and artistic director of, we're going to perform 14 themed concerts in 2023 to help local nonprofits. Our spring tour features some amazing musicians, and I want to read you the names because I'm very proud of them, and I like to promote them. Carol Sylvan, Gabrielle Lakshmi, Stephanie Harrison, Joe Bouchard, Joan Levy Hepburn, John Torres, Bill Carbone, Gray Fowler, Fuzz, Cyrus Madden, Anthony Gadaletta, Eric Cal, Pat Marfiotti, Barry Blumenfield, Rob Sommerville, Rob Volo, Marcos Torres Jr., Mike Marble, Tiger McNeil, Ronnie Sissia, Lou Bodak, Brad Helene, Brad Milov, Steve Redler, Pat Williams, Matt Bell, John Varholak, and Tara Engler. And we're performing some amazing shows. Every season we perform different shows, kind of like a Broadway troupe. This year we're performing Spectrum of Rock, Flower Power, Songs from a Generation of Love, Funk and Disco. Steve was at a Funk and Disco show we did Thursday night at Park City.
Spectacular show, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And a To the Max reunion. And check out these nonprofits we're working with. The Kennedy Collective, Operation Hope, New Canaan Mounted Troop, Wolfgang, Team Wolfgang, that is, Siri, Sterling House Community Foundation Center, Mission, Clasp, Children's Learning Center, Center for Family Justice, Fairfield Theater Company, Common Ground, Cardinal Sheehan Center, and our very own WPKN. And, we stand ready to help local nonprofits and musicians thrive. Here are some upcoming dates. On May 17th, this is to benefit Fairfield Theater, and it's going to be at Fairfield Theater Stage 1. It's the To the Max reunion featuring Joe Bouchard from Blue Oyster, the former member of Blue Oyster Cult. On the 19th of May, for New Canaan Mounted Troop, it's Jazz and Dance at Weburn Country Club. On June 1st, for Team Wolfgang, it's Funk and Disco at the Park City Music Hall. On June 11th, for Common Ground High School, it's Jazz and Soul. It's a house party up in New Haven. On June 16th, for the Children's Learning Center, it's Jazz and Dance at Sarah Fresco in Stamford. And then on July 29th, we're playing at the Connecticut Challenge Bike Ride at the festival at the Greenfield Hill Green. So you can visit Experience Band Central to sign up for our monthly newsletter, our tour dates, and follow us on Facebook at Experience Band Central. I also play bass and sing in some groups with upcoming dates, and you can check that out at robfriedmusic.com. Joining us now is, via phone, is Rob Sommerville. Rob, are you there?
I'm here.
Clear as a bell.
Okay, good. I'm 500 miles north of Bridgeport, up in the deep woods of Maine.
You're making me think of that song, 500 Miles High. You're probably you're probably that too. Hang on, let me tell everybody your bio first, then we'll get into this. So, Rob is a saxophonist from Delaware, and he's most known around here in the Bridgeport area for his performances the past 30 years with Kung Fu and Deep Banana Blackout. Musically, everything started clicking for Rob when he was about 8 years old, when he got a recorder and he just started blowing into it. Later, he studied music at University of Hartford, and during that time, he used to go see a band called Tongue and Groove, which I don't know if you guys know, but they were one of the funkiest bands in Connecticut at the time, with Andrew Grohmuller, Jen Durkin, Dave Lavosi, and Eric Kalb. And Rob Sommerville wanted to be in that band, and somehow he made it happen. And that right, and that band evolved into Deep Banana Blackout, which got their real start playing at the Gathering of the Vibes, in a sense. And that was a festival that was started by our good friends Ken Hayes and Bob Kennedy after the passing of Jerry Garcia. So Rob goes on to play with Schofield and Bill Evans, and he did a big tour with the Allman Brothers about 20 years ago where he got to sit in with them. But, I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to just say, welcome, Rob. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you've got my bio down. That's pretty accurate.
Okay, good. But one thing I don't understand is, why saxophone? You were so good at recorder.
Well,
you could have picked up mandolin. What were they playing in Delaware in those days?
I started on piano, and had a horrible piano teacher, and just was ready to throw in the towel. But as a shy boy, when I was young, I was painfully shy and wasn't really too good at sports. Wasn't really I didn't have a thing, and in public schools, I don't know if they still do that, but in Delaware, when you were in third grade, you were introduced to the recorder. And there was, a music teacher in the school who would teach you music and syncopation, but for some reason, the recorder clicked. It was the first thing I was good at, and realized that I was performing at, advancing through the lessons much quicker than the rest of the students. So basically, when push came to shove, fourth grade, you started band, and the summer before that, my mom was like, "All right, you got to play something. What do you want to play?" and I was just like, I don't know, saxophone. And I mean, it's sort of familiar fingering to like what the recorder is, but I had also loved listening to some of my grandfather's records, and he had a couple that featured a saxophone player named Boots Randolph. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Boots Randolph, but he most famously does the saxophone solo on "Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree." That saxophone solo is Boots Randolph. He also did this song called Yakety Sax, which in essence was the theme song to the Benny Hill show.
Yeah.
Okay, that's.
You remember? So I just thought that he was the coolest, and the pictures of him on the album covers with like the shiny saxophone. I just took a chance and was like, the saxophone. And
the rest is history. We're listening to Rob Sommerville here on WPKN 89.5 FM on your dial, WPKN.org if you're on the computer, or we're live streaming at WPKN Radio, the original YouTube channel. And this is Band Central Radio, and I'm here in the studio with John Reid from Fairfield Theater Company, Steve di Costanzo, and we are talking to Rob. Hey, Rob, we just listened to Speed Bump of Your Love. Can you just quickly tell us something about the track that we just listened to?
Well, that song was a long time in the making. I had that idea for several years and just kind of let it simmer for a while.
Was it the speed bump of your love part or the music part?
The speed bump of your love. I mean, the concept of it was, always in my head, and it's not a personal. It sounds very personal, like but it's just kind of like a common experience of, dudes who are chasing around, girls who have no interest in them or whatever, and kind of wasting your time and getting over wasting your time and moving on. So.
Yeah. When let's fast forward today. I got to stand right next to you Thursday night when we played at Park City Music Hall. We played funk and disco.
Such a great night.
I continue to get
Really
blown away
good night.
when I listen to you and Volo play together. It's you guys really transcend. So just give me an idea. What inspires you most right now musically?
Personally, at this stage in the game, it's actually progress. For myself, with the, I'm not touring right now since the pandemic. Neither Deep Banana or Kung Fu are touring, so I've been able to spend a great amount of time recently practicing and undoing, years of mistakes or bad technique, and trying to relearn my technique, and spending time on being able to progress as a musician. And as you get older, you realize there's a lot that you don't know and a lot that you can't do, and I'm just trying to constantly make sure that I'm practicing correctly so that
it's interesting.
See progress.
You're not here in the studio, but that was a big thing we just talked about, in terms of the personal growth part of what you just mentioned, and also kind of undoing parts of your playing and go back and slowly improving. And it shows that you're like a craftsman. You know what I mean? You're looking at this like a craft, like it never ends.
Right. I mean, there's still tons to learn. There's always something more that you can, get better at, get cleaner at, that's why I try to, spend my time very focused on not just noodling around, not just playing through stuff that I can already do, but, actually very disciplined, focused practice on stuff that I can't do. So
yeah, well, and clearly,
I'm lucky that I have the time to be able to do it right now, and have been able to be dedicated to that. So
yeah, and clearly, the stuff that you guys do with Deep Banana. And by the way, Deep Banana will be playing at the Sound on Sound Festival in September, which will be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
But also with Kung Fu, there was a lot of precision, modern jazz precision combined with groove that meant that, you guys were basically, kind of an Olympic team, the way you approach playing music, right?
Yeah, there's no doubt. When I took that job and got that gig, excuse me, there was, a lot of work that had to go into learning the material they were already doing. They had been together for about a year before I joined the band.
Uh-huh.
So, but it was, after that we started, writing the bulk of our material.
Yeah, and you found something that really pushed you to your next, phase of growth.
Absolutely. There was a few tunes that they played that I was like, I'll never be able to play that song. I don't know. As much as I practice, I'll never be able to do that. And lo and behold, just like I was saying before, you put the time in, you practice appropriately or correctly, and before you knew it, I'm playing this song that I just couldn't believe that I would, that I could perform, that I could get through and do. So,
yeah. Hey, Rob, this is Steve. I just wanted to ask a quick question in terms of some of your role models growing up in terms of playing sax or even contemporary sax players that you feel are kind of artists that you were going to learn from.
Right. Well, when I was in high school, I was in a very competitive jazz band. Our high school jazz band was very competitive.
What part of the country were you in?
This is in Wilmington, Delaware, Brandywine High School, Brandywine Blazers.
There we go.
And, the bulk of the stuff we were listening to were all the, big band stuff. But it was guys like Stan Kenton, Rob McConnell, Boss Brass, Pat Williams records. These are all like, stage band, concert jazz bands. So I was really into that. But, when I was a teenager, I loved Michael Brecker. He was, and Branford Marsalis. Those two were just my favorite guys to check out and listen to. But then when I got to college, I was studying at the Hart School of Music with Jackie McLean. And he, his contribution and he's just legend in, in the jazz world.
Right.
And had this program at University of Hartford, and just learning not just the music and the notes, from him, but the experience of, African American music, of African American history, of, the Black American experience, beyond just music, and learning it from somebody who lived through, the bebop era with Miles Davis and, Charlie Mingus and everybody that he played with, Art Blakey, just being around him and understanding the seriousness of the music, that really moved me into studying, a bit more jazz names like Dexter Gordon
and it's interesting,
Lester
Rob.
Young and those guys.
It's interesting, Rob, that I can hear that in your playing. There's a depth and a tone place that you come from that's not like a guy blowing a contemporary jazz sax. There's something that takes me back when I hear your sax playing, and I think it comes from these roots that Steve helped you dig up. Hey, I want to thank you for spending a little time with us here. How can listeners who want to get to know you either find you on social media or a website or anything like that, if people wanted to reach out to you?
I mean, Facebook is there, Instagram is there, the Kung Fu websites, the Kung Fu pages, or the Deep Banana pages. I'm not super, involved in a lot of it. I just post stuff randomly or let people know when I have gigs or stuff. But I'm definitely, on both of those platforms and available. And
I would say, if you want to see Rob Sommerville up close and personal, come to our June 1st event at the Park City Music Hall for Team Wolfgang. That's to benefit young adults with development disabilities. You won't be disappointed. Rob, I want to thank you for your time. Have a great Monday, and we'll catch up soon.
All right, great, Rob. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye. You too. Bye-bye. Wow. So you know what we're going to do right now? We are going to go right into our interview with John Reid, because I had some other things I wanted to do, but I want to just start talking to John. You're listening to WPKN 89.5 FM here in Bridgeport, WPKN.org, and WPKN Radio on YouTube, the original YouTube channel. So, John, you know, while working in the humanitarian field, decades before he became one of Fairfield County's leading live music presenters, John Reid always had a strong passion for the arts. He worked for international relief agencies, CARE, as the chief technology officer from 1986 to 1996, and then as the chief operating officer for World Vision. He also led nonprofits supporting children's health and welfare, such as Families First, Child Help, and the Hole in the Wall Foundation right in our neck of the woods here in Connecticut, the Paul Newman Foundation. In all his roles, his guitar was never far from his side. John's love for the arts, particularly music, remains very much alive to this day. And besides being an accomplished singer, songwriter, and guitarist, he is the executive director, the business side, and the producing artistic director for the Fairfield Theater Company, a position he's held since 2012. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have an upcoming event, Band Central partnering with FTC on Wednesday, May 17th. So I'm really happy John is with us today. Welcome, John.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thanks. And I appreciate the fact that you guys are focused on FTC for this fundraiser, too, on May 17th. That's great. I mean, a lot of people don't realize we're a nonprofit organization ourselves. And as I say, we're just so cool. No one can figure that out. But,
before hold on one second.
Yeah.
Before we get into FTC, I know I read your bio, but tell us a little bit more about yourself. Like, how did you even become involved with FTC?
Okay, so let me go back in time a little bit quickly. But first of all, I didn't grow up around here. I grew up in southern Mississippi. I moved there when I was 5 from Washington, D.C., and that certainly influenced my exposure to music. I started playing guitar when I was in my teens, late teens, and getting out and playing, bars, restaurants, and things like that. And music was really, I'm going to say, my first and closest love in many ways. But I also did theater and acted and did a fair amount of theater, and I was always on the performance side. And then at some point, I made the mistake of letting someone know that I could do something like build something or book something. So immediately you end up on the production side to some degree. So along those lines, I was gigging regularly. By this time, I was in Charlottesville, Virginia, which was a great music scene back in the 70s and in the 80s. And I had a day job, which became a career. And that day job was working for an international humanitarian organization, which to me was kind of my day job. And then I would go off to play a gig that night. And without realizing over a course of a few years, I suddenly was taking more and more responsibility. And before I knew it, I was 20 years working in international humanitarian organizations, traveling around the world, speaking, raising money, doing everything required to do that. These were some really large agencies. Moved to New York in the mid-'80s, working for
So you were on track to be running the United Nations. That's kind of what I'm getting here, Steve.
Well,
right?
he's on his way to New York now, so I think we're going to hear the.
Well,
if he made it.
But then there's got to be a mistake that brought him
Exactly.
to FTC.
Well, I ended up at CARE, which was the the CARE package from the 1940s post-war, and they were one of the largest.
Massive.
They were largest. We had 40,000 staff in 25,000 staff in 40 countries, and I was with the U.S. office. But I actually, that was my day job again. I was working from I was early, so say 7 in the morning till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. Then I head to the theater. I worked for the Roundabout Theater for a couple of years as a producing director of their conservatory and their ensemble company.
Okay. Yeah.
And I had gone there to take class, but again, I said something to the now late Gene Feist, who was the founder of the Roundabout. There's something about improving the conservatory a little bit. Next thing I know, I was writing a report for him just to kind of, and so I was doing that at the same time. And that career in humanitarianism took me then to World Vision, which had, 30,000 staff in 100 countries, and eventually the chief operating officer. It's a huge job. I had a ton of responsibilities.
And tell our listeners just a little bit about that, the mission for that organization.
Well,
it's quite compelling.
Well, World Vision, really, their focus was on the world's poor. They were the largest child sponsorship agency in the world, sponsoring a child in India or Africa or someplace like that, and really impressive organization. And from there, I then went to two more child welfare and children's mental health organizations. By the way, still gigging in the evenings, less, because as the jobs got bigger and bigger, it was harder for me to take time out.
It's funny because I have people sometimes say, I was gigging at times while I was working at Bridgewater, and people say, wouldn't you get exhausted? And I would explain to them, the gigging gives you energy.
Right, exactly. That was the fun part. That was the reward at the end of the day, although it's hard work, too, as you know. Yeah. And anyway, so very long story short, I was working for an agency called Child Help, which was the largest agency in the country focused on the treatment and prevention of child abuse. Got a call from a headhunter talking about the Hole in the Wall Foundation, which was one of Paul Newman's charities. As things turned out, my wife and I were ready to move back east. We were living in Arizona at the time, and her family was from around here. So I took that position, and a great organization, and they were, again, focused on kids at very high risk. One of the first things I did was help produce a concert at Lincoln Center that we had there that headlined by Stevie Wonder, who volunteered his efforts, and a number of wonderful people. But that job, within a couple of years, I had combined the two organizations I worked for, and I knew it was time to do something different. And so this is where the serendipity comes. My neighbor was Paul Newman's youngest daughter, whose husband was on the board of FTC, and they lived a few houses down. So I had them over for dinner. I said, first time in my life I have a little bit of time on my hands. I'd love to volunteer. I've worked for so many nonprofits, and you can't really volunteer for the organizations that might be doing the same work. She said, well, you're a musician. What about FTC? And funny, I'd been in town 2 years. I didn't know what FTC was. In fact, I saw something in the parking lot that said Stage 1 in this warehouse. I thought it was a sound stage for producing commercials. I'd done some commercials when I was a young guy, something similar to that.
Yeah.
So she said, no. I said, Fairfield. I said, no, I'm not interested in theater anymore. She said, no, it's music. It's a music venue. And I said, well, listen, I'll be happy to, if they could use some volunteer work. I don't want to be on the board or anything, but I do have some experience. Maybe I could have some ideas. That was my thought. My grand notion was I would volunteer for them. I sent Kurt, who was on the board, her husband, a resume, and he called me back in a few minutes. He said, I've got another idea for you. Don't say no. And I've been around long enough to immediately say no when someone says that. The other idea was the founder and former director had left several months before that.
Yeah, we're talking about Miles Merrick.
Miles
who's
Merrick,
a friend of ours who really initiated this partnership with Fairfield Theater Company and
Absolutely.
Band Central.
Long
But I will say, what John has done at Fairfield Theater, just observing it as somebody I've performed at Fairfield Theater over 80 times in 17 years, and I've seen how it runs and the quality of it. You really, everything you talked about running these organizations, understanding a nonprofit as a business, you have taken Fairfield Theater and the warehouse and all the projects to a level of business efficiency that has really been, great for the theater, but also great for the community. So I'd like you to fast forward to right to today and just give us an update on what are the main priorities of Fairfield Theater, not only as a music venue, but as a nonprofit organization in our community.
As a nonprofit, and the part that really resonated for me, we are a community-based organization. We do have a couple of, I may say, great venues. We have 200 live concerts a year between the two venues. The third venue, as I was telling you guys earlier, we turned our parking lot into a third venue. We're getting ready to build a permanent stage there as well. But really, in the end of the day, it's the quality of life. It's the joy we bring to the community. And nothing struck me so hard as when the pandemic hit, and we had to basically empty the place out. And of course, I never stopped going to work, but and I remember walking around through the campus when the place was completely empty and the pandemic had hit, and nobody knew what the heck was going to happen from that. And what really struck me was how much the community needed music and film and theater and comedy, all the things we were doing more than ever before. I mean, there was a hunger and a thirst. And some of those early shows, you guys remember, pretty bizarre. We had to cover the area with plexiglass to create barriers between the musicians, between the audience, et cetera. And yeah, it was. I remember going there. I thought, well, this is weird. This is odd. But I was grieving inside, primarily thinking about the need, the hunger people had for love. Because to me, music is one of those things you listen to a song, close your eyes, and you go back 20 years to when you first heard it, 30 years, 40 years. I'm getting older. I can go back a lot of years. And that was the thing, and I could just tell. And by the way, the town of Fairfield wasn't allowing any outdoor shows at that time. I just thought it was just heartbreaking.
We're listening to John Reid, who's the executive director and artistic director at Fairfield Theater Company. We're here on Band Central Radio. This is Rob Fried, and we've got Steve di Costanzo in the studio. We're having a good time talking to John about Fairfield Theater, not just the idea that they have shows 200 times a year and really keep us always wanting to check out their calendar and see what's going. But, I think there are other things that you do for the community, just, the local restaurants benefit. Fairfield Center is very vital right now. And, if a large corporation was thinking of moving to Connecticut or moving out of Connecticut, like some of them think, you might think twice when you think about, hey, there's a burgeoning arts and music scene. And I think Steve can speak to this as well. That PKN, being WPKN as a nonprofit organization that is solely devoted to artists and kind of what you described, the well-being of our community.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Of course, for us during COVID, WPKN tried to fill that void of not having any live music.
Right.
I mean, luckily we were able to get through it, and stay open and still kind of do a 24/7 approach. But to have live music back is something that was sorely needed. And you guys have you've put together two great operations, and the stage one is one of the most attractive sounding listening rooms ever. It's like really being in your living room, and the acoustics are incredible.
It's a Shakespearean, for those who haven't been there, it's a Shakespearean thrust stage, which means the stage goes out into the audience. So the artist gets to see the audience on three sides. It's a black box theater of sorts. And when stage one is sold out or close to sold out, for the musician, it's unreal. All the musicians from around the world, their feedback of stage one is just,
It really is. And honestly, I can't take credit for that, because that existed before me. I can take credit for not messing it up and making sure that we improve the sound and lighting and stuff like that. But we've left that as a black box theater because it's a phenomenal listening room. And when I started playing music in the very early 70s, we had coffee houses that were listening rooms, and you would go and listen. I remember those days. If someone sneezed, everybody kind of turn around and stare at them. Oh my gosh, you're not listening to the music, and being brought up like that and playing in an environment like that. Really, it just, I have to say, when I first came to the first show I came to at FC, I had never been to a show, by the way, by the time when
even when you were at Hole in Wall, and
No, I didn't know about it. I drove by again, and I was traveling 70% of the time, mostly internationally, so I wasn't in town much. But as soon as I walked in that black box, which was very similar to a second stage that the Roundabout Theater had called the Susan Block Theater, and I produced and acted in, 20, 30 shows in that theater. And it was very similar size. It was 220, 250 cap room. And I thought, wow, this is just, what a brilliant space to re-remember, because now it's all about big spaces, the larger the act and stuff like that. I love that intimacy. One of the first shows I went to at FTC after I started was the great John Mayall. And first of all, I couldn't believe that John Mayall was playing a 200 cap room.
Right.
And he got up and he looked around and he said, "This is like playing in my own living room." And I thought to myself, "Man, this is like you playing in my living room." I feel this is great, fantastic.
And I got to say, the staff, Rob Martineau, the
Those guys
team,
are fantastic.
you know, it's you just feel like you're getting class all the way. So let's talk a little bit about a little future looking. Like you mentioned, the new stage.
Yep.
So this will be a third stage in the parking lot of FC4. But what are the main priorities right now for FTC? And how could people that are listening, how can they get involved? What are the ways to get more involved with FTC? I know there's a membership. You can become a member. What's included if you become a member?
Well, membership usually gives you access to shows that on sale before anyone else, so you can get the best seats. And it's also a way of supporting the theater. Quite frankly, most members, while they do get benefits, we do a number of free shows for our members. Some of the up-and-coming artists that we're bringing in, we'll make those free to members. Discounts on tickets and things like that. But really, most of them do it because they want to support FTC. They realize the sort of the vibrant role that we play in the community. And I think when I look at the future, one of the things that is clear to me is that the more that we can do to really make the FTC experience a part of the community and the community part of that experience, meaning that it's not just a music venue, it's not just a place to see a film, it's all that. But it really is, this is the community's venue. In fact, some of the stuff I'm proudest of are the nonprofit fundraisers that we host there. And it's true, the nonprofits, rent the space from us, but we produce shows, and our whole team goes at this. And I got to tell you, I know you've been to a lot of those fundraisers, but it really makes a difference. And the ability the capacity building to help our colleagues that are in a lot of organizations are very meaningful. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, I do want to say if you are a nonprofit listening and you're thinking about where to do an event, and I'm not pitching you now, but I am just telling you from my experience, the ability to have people use the foyer and the art gallery for a reception area for an hour so people can mingle before a show, have a drink or two, then hear the lights flicked, move into a theater that's very comfortable to be in, that can be set up according to your likes and dislikes if you want dancing, and then have this intimate living room experiencing music that's not blaring at you, that sounds really good. It's also a perfect setting for, in the middle of a show, having a speaking program where you can come up and actually talk to an audience and you can see their eyeballs. It's not like you're separate from them.
Way back. Yep.
So it's really a premier live music fundraising venue, and I think the cost you guys have kept the cost for nonprofits very reasonable.
Really
reasonable,
down.
Yeah.
Significantly less for nonprofits, and again, it's part of. If you think about it, everything we do, FTC, all of us, music, the arts, culture, that's, in my mind, the tiebreaker for a place. I will tell you, growing up in a smaller town in southern Mississippi, there was not a lot going on. Now, there was some phenomenal music that was being put together, but not in plain sight because of the segregation in those days, things like that. But there. Most people say that a significant part of the greatest music in the world, had its origins in Mississippi and came through. But to be here in Connecticut and, around here, the music scene is just thriving. It's extraordinary. There are so many opportunities now to go to a show, and great musicians, local musicians, as well as the touring musicians, just a phenomenal wealth of talented people.
Yeah. And we have an event we're doing together on May 17th. One of the things we do with Band Central is we want to support these partners that we work with. And one of those that has been, very loyal and helpful to Band Central over the years is the theater. And we know for sure the importance of arts and music as it's connected to well-being and healing. That's why Band Central and the Band Central Fund are a supporter of WPKN. as well as the theater. So what we're doing on May 17th, we're kind of combining a couple things. It's, a rock show featuring Joe Bouchard, who was one of my heroes growing up. Growing up in this area, we got into, before Led Zeppelin, there was Blue Oyster Cult, and it was really edgy, good, great rock and roll. But I'm also having musicians join me from around the country that I've been playing music with for 50 years. And the bass player who played with Susan Tedeschi before she joined with Derek Trucks, some really great cats. They're flying in from San Diego,
fantastic.
all over.
That's great. Yeah.
And we've all played with Joe Bouchard before, so it's kind of a reunion gig. Now, that's the good news. The bad news is there's probably about 20 seats left if you include standing room,
That's
because
true.
it's going to turn into a bit of a reunion. But I would encourage you to go to fairfieldtheater.org, check the show out on May 17th. You can get a couple seats. You can, meet us there. And so, thank you, John, for hosting us. And also, we feel really good about being a contributor to the future of the theater.
I truly appreciate that. I really do. I mean, listen, FTC doesn't belong to me. It belongs to the community. I'm a steward of this wonderful organization for these, now 11 plus years.
Right.
But everything at FTC belongs to this community, purely and simply.
Yeah, we're all very fortunate to be living in this community.
We
right?
are. We are.
Well, good show.
Yeah,
Rob.
wait a minute,
Yeah.
wait. Oh, hold on here, guys. Oh, there it is.
Oh yeah,
That's our
There we go.
our
That's
closing
end note.
music.
putting the
Right.
groove
All right.
juice.
Here we are in the groove.
Yeah, John used to host a program. We got less than a minute here. John used to host a program or participate a program here on PKN. So this
That's
is
true.
his
That's
first time
true.
coming back to these beautiful studios here at 277 Fairfield Avenue.
What a pleasure to see the
Little
place
different,
now.
right? Than
It's
the
fantastic, Steve,
old
really.
jigs. Yeah.
Fantastic. I love it.
Hey, if you want to, you can email me at Rob Fried. I'm at refried@optonline.net. You can also sign up for our newsletter by visiting experiencebandcentral.com. I want to say thank you to Audrey Neforis, Paula Murphy, and Andy Caddison from my team, and to our guests, Rob Sommerville, John Reid, and Steve di Costanzo. Our next show is Monday, the fourth Monday in May. I don't have the date. I don't have the date with me, but we're going to have Wolfgang's executive director, Amy Turner. We're going to also have John Torres from the Park City Music Hall, and we're going to have a special guest, my friend who's the artistic director of the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, Ben Jeffy. So,
For those of you streaming still, we are Rob Fried. You are Rob Fried.
oh, that's it. I'm checking out.
This is,
Bye-bye, everybody.
Those on the stream are getting some extra time. Yeah.